that like you mentioned that these technologies are not being built with trying to answer the questions of who we are in top of mind. They are just not really emerging at all. Right? What we're seeing now is how can they make as much profit as possible, and
Yeah.
how can they just really re- replace a lot of things that can be optimized. And this obsession that we have with optimization on our
Yep.
society, that, like you say, this is where the meaning crisis connects. Is we're just optimizing so much of our lives that all of a sudden let's just pretend that AI is able to do everything for us. We still have this lack of purpose, lack of fulfillment. There's despair in our society.
Uh,
How are we gonna tackle that?
I think that these machines are going to pour gasoline on the fire of the meaning crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of people are going to find themselves suddenly economically and culturally disenfranchised, or at least their status is reduced. Uh, what happens if these machines write poetry really wonderfully or write music really wonderfully? What if these machines can create music videos with completely artificial people, right? Singing beautiful songs that become hits. What does that mean for musicians? And I'm not going to go through every thing. Um, I think what we'll do is we are going to put increasing, sorry, I think what one group of people are going to do, there's going to be lots of reactions. There's going to be religious fundamentalisms. There's going to be sort of cargo cults around the AI. There's lots of different things that are going to happen. But I think one thing that's going to happen by and large is that people are going to try and anchor their identity, their sense of what makes them, inherently valuable as a person, to what I call the spiritual somatic axis. Uh, why are those going to take longer to get to be replaced by the machine? Because the somatic machines aren't embodied, which puts severe limitations on them. And that's part of the 4E-cog-sci argument. As long as they're disembodied, there's severe limitations on what they can know. They're very much completely bound right now to propositional knowing, a little bit of procedural, perspectival and participatory, because they're not embodied, because they don't have consciousness. Um, those are down the road. So people are going to put emphasis on what's non-propositional about us and gives us ways of knowing that aren't propositional. One is our embodiment, and that's sort of the soul, the ineffable soul of our embodiment. And another one is the ineffable dimensions of our spirit, that part of us that is capable of mystical experience, transformative experience, that can't be put into words. This profound sense of connectedness, um, and people are going to increasingly put an emphasis on that spiritual. Sorry, I keep being too broad, and I apologize. One significant portion of our society is going to be increasingly driven to say, well, the machines can't have mystical experiences. The machines don't understand, what it is to be embodied, to really enjoy the taste of ice cream, and that sort of dimension, and the link between them will become more pronounced. And the problem that we face with that is that spiritual somatic dimension, which has always been a profound part of our understanding of, and I don't like this adjective, but it's the only one I have, of our spirituality, of
Mm-hmm.
who we are as spiritual beings. Um, we're going to put increasing demand on that anchor us and give us our sense of worth and value. But increasingly, the traditional ways in which that axis, the mind, body, the spirit, right, the spirit, soul, this spiritual somatic axis, the traditional ways of understanding that are going to be increasingly undermined, because those use a two worlds mythology. They often involve the idea that there's sort of a secret special sauce that human beings have that can't be explained in a naturalistic way. And And that's because that's behind some of the people that are just dismissing my work, and I understand it. This is a long. This has been going since the axial age. It's powerful. It's deep, and in some very important ways that I acknowledge it works for people. But um, that's going to be that trying to maintain that is going to be increasingly difficult as the differences between us and these machines disappear and they start to increasingly supersede us in things that were supposed to be indications of our, I don't know what to call it, our spiritual essence or something like that. So we're in this weird situation where we are going to increasingly rely on something, some of us, sorry, will increasingly rely on this axis while being increasingly unable to understand it or articulate it or talk about it in the traditional language that we've inherited from the past. That's a very challenging situation. So paradoxically, because it sounds like I'm being anti-religious here, I'm not. It sort of came off in the first video. That's why the more recent video I did with Ryan Barton gave me a chance to, first of all, apologize and also to um, restructure things. I think theology, in a weird sense, broadly construed as the attempt to understand human spirituality and its place in the world, is going to become weirdly important. Well, you know, where theology and philosophy overlap with cog sci, it's going to be increasingly like we're going to have to rapidly reformulate and restructure what spirit and soul mean and how we can talk and think about them. And so I think that's going to be an important place in which this identity issue is going to be taken up. And that overlaps tremendously with the meaning crisis, because the degree to which that's not working for people is the degree to which they're going to be even more spiritually hungry. You know, and if you have a very sort of basic notion of wisdom and meaning, you know, wisdom is just acquiring, sorry, meaning is just sort of a, you know, acquiring control and power. These machines are going to undermine that in a very significant way. And if you think of wisdom as just sort of common sense, these machines are going to challenge that for you. So, you know, questions about what is spirit, what is soul, what is wisdom, what is meaning, these questions are now going to be taken up, I think, in very powerful ways. And the traditional legacy religions as they are now do not have the resources to address it because they have not had to ever confront this problem before. One of two things will happen. One of them is they'll dig in and there'll be nostalgia and you'll get fundamentalist and just no, so human beings, right, have this magic secret sauce, and just right. The other, and what I'm hoping for and trying to provoke, but I was a little too harsh in the first video, but what I'm trying to provoke is I want to see what, and I mean this really genuinely, like, can these religions really like resurrect themselves, restructure themselves, reorganize themselves to deal with this? Now, some people are dismissive of this and say, oh, we don't need religion. Well, I don't, if you know my work, I'm not advocating, especially any of the propositional theories of religion. However, what we do need is we need to really fundamentally reorganize culture and society and fundamentally reinterpret who we are and what the cultivation of wisdom and meaning mean and what self-transcendence means and what's embodiment means. And the only thing that has ever done that on the scale that we need is religion. So we need something like that right now. That's my answer to people who say, well, we don't need. Well, give me an example of something else that is up to the task. And I'm not advocating for any religion. And I've even given you an argument that we can't just go back. We've got to somehow go forward in a really evolutionary, revolutionary way. So I do think that's what's going to happen.
Wow, it's very thought provoking, and one of the ideas that come into mind is I had a guest on the show, a previous guest, Anil Seth. He's a neuroscientist.
Oh, great work.
Yeah, he's amazing. And one of the questions that I asked him was that, once we really reveal, he's into free will, and he doesn't believe as much as we have that free will as much as we think. One of the things that I asked him was, it's gonna remove, like you say right now, it's gonna remove that mystical, that spark, that
Yeah.
untangible thing that we can't really put our finger to when it comes to being a human.